In the last lesson, we examined some general strategies for identifying correct answers in reading comprehension questions. In this lesson, we'll examine some tips to consider when tackling the three most common question types. Let's begin with the main idea questions. These are questions that look something like this. Here, we're looking for a general overview of the passage. Fortunately, one of the steps in the general strategy is to summarize and record the main idea. So when answering a main idea question, your first step should be to review your summary and look for the answer choice that most closely matches yours. Now, what do you do if you don't find an answer choice that matches yours? Well, at this point, we need to be somewhat aggressive. The remaining tips will help you identify the correct answer choice and eliminate incorrect answer choices. When examining the answer choices, you should remember that you're looking for one that encapsulates the entire passage. I mention this because incorrect answer choices are often too specific and fail to summarize the big picture. So on a related note, you should avoid answer choices that focus on only one part of the passage. You should also avoid answer choices that contain information not mentioned in the passage. This is another common type of incorrect answer choice. The last tip associated with main idea questions is to watch out for tone. In some instances, we can immediately eliminate an answer choice if the tone is off. For example, if the passage is entirely neutral and an answer choice suggests that the main idea is to argue something or criticize something, then that answer choice is probably not correct. Since main idea questions are so popular on the GRE, let's practice with a passage. You're probably going to want to pause this video and find the main idea before continuing. Okay, here's a question related to the passage you just read. Now pause this video and answer the question before continuing. Alright, the question reads, the primary focus of the passage is on which of the following? In other words, what's the passage all about? To begin, answer choice A is not correct. Only one theory is discussed in any great detail. Sure, there's a very brief note here that a different conventional theory exists, but we really can't say that the passage is about comparing theories. That's going too far. Also remember that the correct answer should encapsulate the entire passage, and since the passage mentions the computer model several times, the correct answer should probably reference this. Answer choice A makes no mention of the computer model, so it's not correct. Answer choice C is not correct either. Sure, the passage discusses the results of an experiment, but there's no reference to suggesting further areas for research. This additional content is a common trap in reading comprehension answer choices. Next we have answer choice D, which is not correct either. The passage describes only one phenomenon, not two. Now answer choice E is not correct, but some students will find it compelling since it does contain two true statements. Recent data was analyzed and a model was constructed. However, the problem here is that the order of events is reversed. The passage states that the model came first and was later confirmed by observations, but answer choice E says that the observations came first and the model came second. As such, answer choice E is not correct. This leaves us with answer choice B. Notice that this answer choice encapsulates the entire passage. It mentions the computer model from the first paragraph, the natural phenomenon from the second paragraph, and the observations from the last paragraph. As such, it's the best answer. Okay, now let's examine some strategies to consider when tackling details questions. These are questions that look something like this. As you can see, details questions refer to very specific information from the passage. Now if you're lucky, you may actually remember the specifics necessary to answer a details question, especially if you fully engaged in the passage while reading. If that's the case, simply answer the question and move on. On the other hand, if you don't remember the specific information, you'll have to reread the portion of the passage that contains those details. Of course, if you're forced to return to the passage, you'll want to identify the relevant section of the passage as quickly as possible. One way to do this is to refer to your paragraph summaries. Here, you may find information directing you to the appropriate paragraph that contains the necessary information. Another strategy is to identify the keyword or keywords in the question that highlight the primary detail you're looking for. For example, let's say the question asks, according to the passage, Wilson's theory of equilibrium was intended to... Here, the word equilibrium highlights the primary detail in the question, so now you should skim the passage looking for that word. Let's practice this strategy with the following details question. If you don't remember where this particular detail was in the passage, and your paragraph summary doesn't mention it, you'll need to identify a key word or two to look for while skimming the passage. Here, the question is about consumers and their beliefs, so we might look for the words consumer and believe as we skim the passage. As we skim the passage, we eventually find the word consumers right near the end. So the answer to the question should be found in this area. Here we're told that the perception among consumers was that the pre-recorded tapes were more available in VHS format. So when we return to the question, we can see that the answer must be D. Incidentally, I should note that although we didn't find the word believe in the passage, the word perception does appear here, and it's somewhat synonymous with believe. Now, you'll find some details questions do not provide any information regarding the location of the specific details, and some questions highlight in yellow the section of the passage that discusses the details of the question. In these instances, begin reading one sentence before the highlighted section and continue to one sentence after. The answer is typically in this region. So for example, let's say that a question asks us to identify the purpose served by the highlighted section of this passage. Rather than read the highlighted text only, you should also read the sentence before the highlighted text and the sentence after the highlighted text. Doing so will give you a much better idea of the context of the highlighted text. Next, we'll discuss inference questions. Here are some examples of inference questions. They essentially ask us to use information in the passage to make logical inferences. Now, when answering inference questions, the most important point to remember is, do not infer more than is logically permissible. The biggest problem that students have with inference questions is that they inject their own personal assumptions and feelings into the passage. For example, let's say that a passage tells us Marcus has seen every Rocky movie 11 times. Based on this, which of the following can be inferred? Well, if we inject our own opinions into the given information, we may decide that all three can be inferred, when C is the only logical inference we can make. What about A? Surely Marcus must enjoy Rocky movies, right? While it seems that Marcus might enjoy Rocky movies, can we really say that he must enjoy Rocky movies? No. Perhaps Marcus is watching the movie for a research project, or perhaps he's watching the movies as part of some movie marathon. Since we cannot be absolutely certain that Marcus enjoys Rocky movies, answer choice A is not correct. What about B? Well, must it be true that Marcus does not mind watching Rocky movies repeatedly? It's conceivable that Marcus dislikes watching Rocky movies repeatedly, but his movie watching is part of some sort of punishment. While this scenario seems highly unlikely, it does show that we cannot be absolutely certain that Marcus does not mind watching Rocky movies repeatedly. As such, answer choice B is not correct. Answer choice C, however, is a valid inference. Since Rocky III is a Rocky movie, it must be the case that Marcus has watched it 11 times. Notice that word must. I used it a lot while examining the answer choices, and I suggest that you do the same. So when examining the answer choices for an inference question, be sure to ask, must this be true? If it could be true in some instances, then it is not the correct answer. If it is most likely true in most but not all cases, then it is not the correct answer either. It is the correct answer only if it must be true. Okay, that concludes this lesson on answering the three most common question types.